It seems to be working. This is my first time. Hang on, I'm going to just shut off this heater. It's my first time trying to go live from the actual Circle app. So fingers crossed, it looks good. I hope people are able to get in. Welcome, and thank you for watching, whether you're here live or watching on replay. We're here inside of Space-Time Alchemy, which is the place where I teach about Bach flower alchemy. And well, I'm assuming that if you're in here already, that you've checked out some of the introductory materials. If you're absolutely brand new to this community, please look for the videos and resources tab on the left. There's a lot of introductory material there to explain a little bit about Bach flower alchemy, how it was created, what it's for, which is really about emotional and energetic mastery, personal evolution. That's my thing. Trying to really go beyond healing into whatever is next for us, trying to maximize what we can get out of life, even beyond what we might be able to imagine from our present vantage point. So certainly talking about helping kids with their emotions is well within the realm of healing, but it's also about, helping their development as children, right? Children are on a developmental trajectory. And when we talk about accelerating that, I'm not talking about making a 3-year-old behave like a 10-year-old or something like that. We don't expect 6 or 7-year-olds to have the maturity of an adult, but we want them to not get stuck on their journey. And it is part of the human condition that we all get stuck in certain places according to the things that happen to us from outside that we have no control over. Certain kinds of loss or emotional trauma can really keep us held back from our normal pace of development. So, what could we do if we could prevent those kind of situations and then really help children to develop themselves as quickly as is normal for them, not to create little child prodigies, but to create people who can get on with their life journey in the most efficient and joyful way, right? That's what life is all about. So I know that there are some stepmoms who have joined this group specifically to have this level, this kind of next level opportunity to help the other people in their family. And I say bravo to you for being here. You're gonna learn a ton of interesting stuff. Before I go any farther, let me have a little drink. I have to be very clear with a disclaimer that nothing that you hear today or see anywhere on this platform is to be construed as medical advice. I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a licensed medical practitioner. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. So please, if there are any real issues for yourself or for anyone that you love, anyone in your family, please do not ever hesitate to seek out medical advice. And in many cases, you really should. Certainly, if we're talking about, today we're talking about sadness. So, if we're talking about long-term signs of depression, we need to be responsible and careful about that and doing whatever we can to get the correct professional help for someone, whether it's a child or an adult. So I'm going to be talking about sadness, grief, loss today in the context of kids and I'm going to often refer specifically to stepkids because they have so much difficulty with this. Universally, it's a very rare child who isn't reacting with some kind of sadness. It's a sad thing that has happened to them. Even if the breakup of their family was the best possible thing for their parents, who have both gone on to have happy lives, it's still a sad thing for a child whose family constellation, and this is another kind of whole energetic rabbit hole that you can fall down if you want to, but their family constellation has been ruptured in a very significant way. And it is an energetic wound to a child to have this happen to them. So, even if the both parents are repartnered and super happy and it was the best thing that ever happened to them, it's still difficult for the child. So it goes best when both of the parents are continuing to be okay with each other, even not being in relationship with each other, not living together, if they can still be supportive of the child's necessity of, being able to love both parents all of the time, um, then, things go better when that's a possibility. It's not always a possibility. It's not even often a reality, right? So, what we're here to do today is try to find ways to understand what kids are feeling, um, and how to help them with these wonderful Bach flowers, which I wanted to have in my hand. Um, I have a ton of them in my office here. This is Rescue Remedy. I don't know, maybe the light is too strong. There we go. Um, if you've never seen any Bach flowers, Bach flower essences, that's what it generally looks like on the store shelf. You can find this in ordinary pharmacies, in Walmart, Walgreens. It's on Amazon. You can buy Bach flowers anywhere. Okay, so the reason I love to use them is because they work really fast. They're very powerful, but at the same time as being super gentle. So, as with all energy medicines, there's no stuff inside, there's no chemical stuff inside. So, Bach flower therapy is a kind of vibrational medicine. It would be a kind of a physical version of, I don't want to compare them, they're not the same, but like Reiki is an energy medicine, right? Certain kinds of osteopathy would qualify as an energy medicine, even though there's a kind of touch involved, right? So we are energetic beings, and emotions are energy in motion, emotion. Uh, and they often yield to an energetic um, remedy or solution more than they would uh, to anything else. Certainly not to trying to talk sense, right? Like if you've ever been in a sad or angry or anxious place, you understand that you don't respond really well to somebody trying to talk sense to you, right? So we're out of the world of logic here, and we're in the world of the analogic, or magic, as I personally like to call it, because I'm very fond of thinking of the world as a magical place. So, talking about sadness as a theme, then, it's often about a failure to adapt to new circumstances, right? When we're sad about something, we tend to be clinging in some way to the past that we don't want to change. Any kind of loss would qualify in that world, right? That we can't adapt to this new reality where we don't have the person or the thing or the circumstance that we had yesterday or last year or whenever it was. So, adaptation is a really good kind of reminder of what we're looking to accomplish. We want someone to be able to adapt themselves to a new reality so that they can be happy again, because the reality is not going to change, right? Often when you can change something um, in your environment, it's often more like anger or indignation that helps you to bring up the willpower and to take action, to do something to actually create a better environment for yourself. But sadness, as much as it can be a natural phase that we want to go through, what I'm talking here now is about kind of chronic sadness that won't change. I'm not I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't feel sad when we have a loss or when something bad happens. Like, it's how we process things that happen to us in life. We have to go through a period of sadness. What happens very often with children is that they don't have a place to express how they feel. They don't have a place that can receive how they feel. Sometimes, again, if we're talking about children of divorce, right, the parents might feel guilty about what the child is going through. And so they unconsciously telegraph their idea that they've heard enough of this, or that the child shouldn't feel sad, that because the parent is happy, the child should be happy. Sometimes the child doesn't feel free to express the idea that they miss their other parent. So it would be natural for a child to miss their mom when they're at their dad's house. But, you know, dad can't really help them with that, or they think that he can't help them with that, or he's not interested in hearing about mom when the kids are with him. So this kind of sadness about the change of circumstance or the missing somebody, um, it gets stuck there because there isn't a way for it to sort of come out and be supported and get resolved. So adapting is what we're trying to help by using Bach remedies. These remedies act in a way that allows your body to like recalibrate to a new frequency. When we talk about like good vibrations or getting a high vibe, a high vibe, or raising your frequency, all of that kind of language, we're talking about the energetic structure of our whole system, which would be, body and mind together. And it very often happens that we can want to believe something, but in your body, there's no frequency active to host that new belief, right? So it doesn't feel true in your body, and you can't get past it. So that's where these things are amazing, because they kind of prepare your body to host this new perspective, right? This higher frequency of joy that you're trying to bring in, that gets blocked really by the like a distorted frequency, so that you can't hear the clear channel, like when you're turning the knob on a radio to try to excuse me, try to get the clear station coming in. Your body has to cooperate in receiving this higher level message from your higher self, right? The message that it's okay, you're okay now, you're safe, things are going to be good again, people love you, those are the messages that get blocked from coming in. And we want those to be, to have a channel to run freely through your system. So adapting, or not maladaptation, not adapting, is about clinging, right? Clinging to the past, clinging to some kind of comfort. Uh, in kids, we see them literally clinging to a toy or a blankie, right? That is often, sometimes it can be an anxiety thing, but there's often a kind of sadness, right? Kids even cling to their own childhood, like children cling to babyhood, right? They don't want to make the next step that feels a little scary about growing up, when it's time to go to kindergarten or go to first grade, right? we see these regressive behaviors. We see a lot of regressive behaviors in kids who are now having to split their time between two households. It's like, let me stay a baby and not move into this new world where I don't feel completely right. Sometimes sadness is shown in clinging to an actual person, right? Like wanting to be held all the time, clinging to your pant leg, um, and not wanting to accept what's happening in this now, in the real now. So I'm going to talk now archetypally about how the various archetypes experience what I'm just calling sadness as an umbrella term. And again, if this is new for you, please check out the resources tab where there's a lot of information. This is a long journey of learning, and it's going to start to make sense the more that you listen to it. But we have 4 shadow archetypes, the ones where our emotions are making our decisions for us, right? When we're in shadow, we are living in an unconscious way where we can't really access the truth of this present moment that we're in. It's where we're in the grip of our own illusions, of stories we're telling ourselves, of things that we think are true, which really aren't, right? That make us sad. Even when something sad has happened, like a loss, the lingering sadness, the chronic sadness comes from the idea that I can never feel better. I'll never get past this kind of loss, or I can't survive this, or nothing will ever be able to make me feel happy again, or I need to be loyal to the person that I've lost or the thing that I've lost because that loyalty defines who I am. I don't know who I am if I just move on in my life. And this can happen, by the way, it's not just kids. Excuse me. There's a really compelling story in one of the stepmom books. I think it's Step Monster by Wednesday Martin. If you haven't read that one, it's a great book. But she relates a story from, a stepmom about my age who has older stepkids. The woman in the story, her stepkids are older than mine, but she had raised this boy along with her husband, the stepmom, because the biological mom had passed away. So since the boy was 7 or 8 years old, she had been the mother in the household. There was no other mother. And they had a good relationship. And after he got married and was in his 30s, there started to be this rift between them. And she was, always sending cards and gifts to his children for Christmas, birthday, special occasions. And she would also always sign the card, from Granny Florence, I think was her name. And so the cards would be signed by the dad, who was the granddad or the grandpa, and by her, she signed Granny. And she couldn't understand what was happening. And it went on a really long time. And finally, the son, who is the young man, the father of his own children now, finally said to her, "You don't understand. My children have a grandmother and she's dead." It was like he was flooded with this loyalty to his mother after so many years, after more than 20 years of having no problem with this lady who was his stepmom, right? But when he had his own children, it activated such a loss and longing for his own mother that he couldn't, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say that he couldn't find a way to cope with it. I think it was probably a surprise to him too, right? But this loyalty is a huge monster in our step family world for sure. And we can do so much with these things. Okay, so archetypally, we have these 4 shadow archetypes: the prostitute, the child, the victim, and the saboteur. Those are the names that we use for them. It makes it easier to talk about these things. So the prostitute shadow is about, in this context, okay, it's about sadness around belonging, around like tribe, family, around approval, worth, value, and self-expression. So, as I was saying before, right, like sadness can have to do with not being able to express your feelings, or expressing them and not feeling that they're being received in a way that feels supportive to you. The child archetype is around things like permission, punishment, consequences, um, and around the inability to actually get what you want, the frustration of not being able to actualize what you want. So children want a lot of things, and the best that they can do is throw a tantrum or cry or pound their fists on the high chair tray, right? They can't go out into the world and move the parts around to make the things happen that they want. So they might want, really badly want, their family to go back to the way it was and for their parents to be living together again. And it doesn't matter how much they want it, there's nothing they can do to make that happen. So that is a frustration that can be expressed as sadness, right? Anything to do, like I said, uh, with permission. And permission in the world of stepkids I'm talking about perceived permission, right? That there is a perceived permission to miss your parent or to talk about them in the other household. Um, and it's not about like permission in the sense of I told you not to talk about your mom here, right? It's permission in the sense that dad could like, you know, react with body language, with a sigh or rolling his eyes or losing interest in the conversation. Those things are subtle signs of permission, right? Like, this is not what I want to hear about. This is not what pleases me. Tell me something different so that I can engage with you in a different way. It's the permission is subtle. Okay. So that's the child archetype. The victim is about drama, feeling sad about drama. And goodness knows there is a lot of drama in the life of 90% of stepchildren and step families in general. The victim is also about, catastrophe or catastrophizing. What could happen next? If my family has fallen apart, then anything truly can happen to me. And that could be a sad feeling, right? That something unthinkable has happened, and now it's like the carpet has been pulled out from under them and anything could be possible. The victim is also about boundaries and about protecting yourself with boundaries. So protecting your own heart by feeling sad in advance so that you're kind of in charge of the sadness. That's a thing. And it's not only kids who do that, right? Obviously, everything that I'm talking about applies to adults as well. And the remedies apply too, right? They apply to pets. Pets can be sad when uh, they move house or a favorite toy is lost, or, pets can be sad when a new child comes into the family and they don't get the attention that they used to get the same way that kids do. And these things are amazing for pets, by the way. The veterinarians use them everywhere. And the final archetype is the saboteur. The saboteur is about time, so about the past and the present and the future. It would be clinging to the past and having like beliefs about the future that feel true to you. But of course, they can't be true because we can't actually predict the future. It's about thinking that the past determines your future, so that this unhappiness that is rooted in something that happened in your past has to come with you forward into the future. Okay, so those are the four archetypes. And now I'm going to talk about the remedies that are for the main remedies that come to mind for this situation of sad kids. By the way, there is a chat function here. Okay, so if you have any questions that you want me to address, go ahead and type them into the chat and I'll be happy to answer them if I can. So the three remedies, the main remedies I'm going to talk about today, are honeysuckle, Star of Bethlehem, and walnut. And I had it marked in my book, honeysuckle plus Star of Bethlehem plus walnut is a great blend for sad kids. So I'm going to talk about beyond the normal use of these remedies that, I mean, Bach flowers have been used for these things for almost 100 years, and I didn't invent them. What I'm bringing to the table here is an elevated way of understanding the energetics of the situation in order to be able to apply remedies at the deepest level to really get at what's happening. Okay, so I hope I'll be able to be clear here. Honeysuckle, it's the flower, the bush that you're used to seeing that makes those beautiful flowers. So these remedies are made by somebody else does this. I don't do it myself, but I think a person can do it to create their own sort of version of Bach flowers. They take the flowers themselves and put them in a bowl of, pure water and leave it in the sunshine for a certain number of hours. And then that liquid is strained, and that is essentially the essence that we use. They typically would mix it with alcohol or some kind of brandy or preservative. Otherwise, the water tends to grow stuff in it, which we don't want. But so there's no stuff, there's no like grinding the flowers or extracting with alcohol or anything like that. It's just an energetic transfer to the water. So if you're worried about giving this to anybody, you can drink the whole bottle of it. They don't taste great right on your tongue because they do actually put alcohol in to preserve them, but we're going to use them in water. We're going to dilute them, and there's no taste at all. So the way I understand honeysuckle, I think that it addresses the saboteur archetype and the child archetype. The saboteur is this one, as I said before, is about time. It's about clinging to the past. So honeysuckle is known as the remedy for people who can't let go of the nice things in the past. They think that the past was a nicer time than the present. So typically we think about older people, for instance, who are in their golden years, who are listening to the music from their youth, who are maybe, looking through old photo albums of how things used to be, right? Sometimes like we talk about the old soldier who would put on his uniform and go to the Legion to hang out, and reminisce about the war, right? We're getting a little far away from it now, but certainly, 20 years ago, it was still a thing that there were a lot of guys who would go and hang out. It probably still happens, actually, I'm sure, in the States, right? Where there's groups of people who have been in the armed forces who get together and talk about their experiences, which is a normal thing. But in the context of honeysuckle, we normally think about it as being in your older age of reminiscing fondly about things that happened to you in your youth. So there's a quote from a book that I love to use, which I'm just going to show you here in case, Bach Flower Therapy and the Encyclopedia of Bach Flower Therapy by Mechtild Scheffer. Fantastic book. It's available I got mine on Amazon probably. She says of honeysuckle, the quote is, mentally lingering in the wrong place at the wrong time, unable to act. So yeah, this is, I think it's clear, right? For in the context of a child, even if they're not there all the time, it's this repeated loop of not being able to get past the idea that I wish my parents would get back together. I wish things would go back to the way they were. And boy, do I ever hear this from adults, right? Even adult stepmoms who themselves experienced the divorce of their parents will tell me, like, I was in my 20s and still thinking about that. Like, I realized, one woman said, I realized when my father passed away that my dream of my parents getting back together had died with him. And she said, I was shocked because, like, that had been more than 20 years and I didn't even know I was still carrying that around. So, honeysuckle could be so resourceful in terms of helping a child to unburden themselves of this heavy backpack that they're carrying around now, maybe forever, right? We want to be able to just let go of these things. The child part of honeysuckle is wanting to determine their own destiny, but they can't. So that is something that belongs particularly to honeysuckle, this desire to be in charge of your own destiny. And of course, an actual child can't do that. And an adult who is stuck in their child archetype also can't do that. So I speak to people all the time who are in a state of not understanding why, for instance, why doesn't anyone listen to me in my home, like including your own kids, right? Why doesn't anyone listen to me when I say what I want or what needs to happen around here? It's because when you're in your child, whatever you say just falls in front of you and doesn't ever turn into anything because the energy behind the words is from a child place and not a sovereign place where what I say happens because I am the king or the queen of this place. It's not because you yell or because um, put in place consequences or something. It's just like, this doesn't happen in my world, right? You speak with a kind of authority, right? That just makes people listen to you. The energy inside of you before you speak is lined up so that your words are carrying a tone of authority instead of carrying a tone of whining and wishing for something, but secretly knowing that you don't have the capacity to make it happen. That's honeysuckle. Star of Bethlehem corresponds to the victim and again the saboteur. So what Bach wrote about Star of Bethlehem, that's so beautiful. These are his words. He says, Star of Bethlehem is for those who, for a time, refuse to be consoled. This remedy brings comfort. So Star of Bethlehem is one of the 5 remedies in Rescue Remedy because it is so good for um, trauma, emotional trauma, some kind of a loss or a grief that um, that you can't cope with and that stays in your system as a distortion. And it doesn't allow, like they refuse to be consoled, right? This was when I was talking about, talking sense to you, but sometimes even hugs and an understanding ear doesn't help somebody to really move on from a loss. So Star of Bethlehem is a very, very soothing, healing, nurturing, caring kind of remedy. Many practitioners use it as the first remedy that they give to everyone who walks in the door because every one of us has some kind of emotional trauma. It's not possible to live without that, right? Trauma can be something that was traumatic for you, even if not for anyone else. Many of us experienced that our mother went back to work at some point when we were a baby. That's a trauma for you, even if it's just a normal life event that has to happen because people have to work and make money, right? So everybody has emotional trauma in their lives, and Star of Bethlehem can really help to release those things so that you can be in harmony with the emotions that you want to have in the present moment and not be stuck in emotions that are holding you back, that they're not relevant to the present moment, but you can't release them. So that's the victim part. The saboteur part of Star of Bethlehem would be um, uh, well, again, because the saboteur is about time, it would be um, not mixed up. That's not the right word, but uh, being in the grip somehow of the past, the present, and the future as defining you in some way, which on a more expansive level, I think we're getting to understand now, even through the world of physics and quantum physics, that time is a human construct, right? Time does not have the meaning that we assign to it. There are some people who say that we perceive time because our human um, psyche can't grasp the idea that everything could be happening all at once, that everything has already happened, right? That we have this time-based way of thinking, and that can be useful as a tool to us, but we can become trapped in that way of thinking. The saboteur is everything to do with the mind. The saboteur and magician are in what we call the mind channel. The victim is the body channel. So the mind channel would be about this mental numbness that is a hallmark of Star of Bethlehem, and just being unable to snap out of it to feel happy. So sometimes sadness presents as a kind of indifference, like indifference to joy. If it's not really crying or appearing sad, it can be this kind of depressive heaviness where you just can't allow yourself to respond in a joyful way to the present moment. Okay, so that's the Star of Bethlehem piece. And then Walnut is called the Spellbreaker by Bach himself. And that um, that excites me very much, because the idea of like snapping out of it or getting out of the spell that you're under is really exciting. It's also very exciting if I'm talking now to, to a audience of stepmoms, to imagine what Walnut could do really for a child who is literally under a kind of spell from the other parent. It's a kind of emotional hostage situation, which we could think of as a kind of a spell. So Walnut is for people who are in the grasp of someone else, in the sense that uh, you can't stay true to yourself. You are heavily influenced by other people in your environment. It's about being able to cut those ties so that you can be true to yourself, with a clear understanding that, you know, there are many, many levels of how that could be presenting and how it could be addressed in a child who is in a real life situation where their wellness depends on their attachments, right? Like children are all about attachment. You may have heard about attachment theory. It's part of the psychology of childhood development, but children are built to be attached to their parents. So we're not talking about, taking a remedy so that you can unattach yourself from the normal attachment that you're supposed to have, right? These remedies are bringing you into harmony to help you develop in the best way, so that whatever kind of insight you could have that, let's say, allows you space to love both of your parents and to feel good about that, that's what we're looking to install. To be true to yourself in the sense that uh, that you don't um, you don't allow your mind to go down the road of gaslighting. Let's say that you can save a space for yourself where you can stay rooted in what you think and what you believe and what's important to you, even if the adults around you are having a different idea. So the walnut as a remedy is about the child and saboteur archetypes. And I had previously, like until this morning, quite literally, this is a very living system that I'm working with here, this flower alchemy. I had put walnut into the child and victim category. Um, no, sorry, I put it in the child and prostitute. And I would like to change that to be the child and the saboteur, because the power version of the saboteur is the magician. And I think the magician has to be involved in breaking a spell, right? Like that seems obvious to me. So the child is about the resistance piece, about not wanting to grow or adapt or change, to clinging to um, just clinging to the past, as I spoke about in the beginning, right? How kids often regress in their development. I did it myself. I remember being 12 or 13 and not wanting to move out of childhood and have a grown-up woman's body, and so I spent many years with a persona that was a very childlike. I didn't carry it with me all the time, certainly not at school with my friends, but with my family, I was really into kind of baby talk in a way, as humor. It was as humor, but um, now as an adult, I can look back and see where I was holding myself back, right? So that is a child function, that kind of resistance to growing. And then the saboteur is about somehow believing others more than you believe yourself, and being so easily led astray from your own ideals and your own values to embrace ideas of other people instead, being drawn away from your own truth. So let me just say, in this context of stepmoms and biological dads, this could be the loyalty piece of being needing to be true to your mom instead of true to your own heart, which is that you actually love your dad and your stepmom, but you can't allow yourself to own that, because somehow you think that your mom knows better about that situation than you could ever know, right? That would be a saboteur thing, like letting yourself be drawn to the credibility of other people, where you believe in other people's credibility. And then the child piece would be saying, and like, what do I know? I don't have the capacity to make those kind of decisions. So if I put walnut now into this child and saboteur box, it would be there together with chestnut bud, which makes sense. Chestnut bud is about not learning from your mistakes. It's about repeating some kind of hamster wheel of behavior that doesn't ever change. You can't move out of it. Um, you're not taking responsibility for learning the life lessons that are coming at you. That would be chestnut bud. And in that same box of child saboteur is wild oat, which is the remedy of not knowing what you really want, not being clear with yourself about what you really want. So it makes sense to me more. And those of you who are watching who have already done um, some coaching or some programs with me will have a sense of what I'm talking about, and the rest of you are going to catch on slowly, because there's lots of information, as I said, in the resources and the videos. I encourage you to watch those. And if you get to really love this system, then hop over into the Master Alchemist stream, where I'm going to be teaching this system in a very organized way over 12 months, so that you can absolutely learn how to use this amazing system for yourself and for your family, to be able to break through these problems that don't seem to want to go away. I don't know whether you saw the little video I posted with one stepmom who's been working with me, and I sent her a blend in the mail, and on our next session, she held up a little bottle and said, "This stuff really works. This is like happiness in a bottle." So it's that fast. And, there's no reason that we have to struggle for weeks or months or years to get past these things. I think that uh, the time is now to be able um, to use new tools to do things much faster than we used to think was possible. So I'm going to be here tomorrow, also at the same hour, which for me was 11 o'clock Eastern time, and on Wednesday at the same time. So tomorrow I'm going to focus on anger and hostility, even a little bit of violent acting out. And Wednesday I'm going to talk about anxiety. Okay, so we're going to be learning about the system. We're going to be learning about the archetypes. You'll be learning about more about how to actually use these. What do you do with it? How do you give them? Come along again tomorrow, and we'll talk more about that. I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to assume that nobody has any questions for now. But please go ahead and tag me in the group um, if anything comes up that you would like to know. Okay. So thanks again for watching. This replay will stay up in the group. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.